Chapter 8 of Four Girls at Chautauqua. Four Girls at Chautauqua by Pansy. Chapter 8. At Evening Time It Shall Be Bright. Meantime Flossy Shipley came to no place where her heart could rest. She went through that first day at Chautauqua in a sort of maze, hearing yet not hearing, and longing in her very soul for something that she did not hear. That is, she did not hear it distinctly and fairly stated, so that she could grasp it and act upon it; and yet it was shadowed all around her, and hinted at in every word that was uttered, so that it was impossible to forget that there was a great something in which the most of these people were eagerly interested, and which was sealed to her. She felt it dimly all the while that Dr. Eggleston was speaking. She felt it sensibly when they sang. She felt it in the chance words that caught her ear on every side as the meeting closed, bright, fresh words of greeting, of gladness, of satisfaction, but every one of them containing a ring that she could hear but not copy. What did it mean? And above all, why did she care what it meant, when she had been happy all her life before without knowing or thinking anything about it? As they went down the hill to dinner, she loitered somewhat behind the others, thinking while they talked. As the throng pressed down around them there came one whose face she instantly recognized. It belonged to the young man who had spoken to her on the boat the evening before. The face recalled the earnest words that he had spoken, and the tone of restful satisfaction in which they were spoken. His face wore the same look now, interested, alert, but at rest. She coveted rest. It was clear that he also recognized her, and something in her wistful eyes recalled the words she had spoken. "Have you found the Father's presence yet?" he asked, with a reverent tone to his voice when he said "the Father," and yet with such evident trust and love that the tears started to her eyes. She answered quickly: "No, I haven't. I cannot feel that he is my Father." They went down the steps just then, and the crowd rushed in between them, so that neither knew what had become of the other. Only that chance meeting; he might never see her again. Chautauqua was peculiarly a place where people met for a moment, then lost each other, perhaps for all the rest of the time. "I may never see her again," Evan Roberts thought, "but I am glad that I said a word to her. I hope in my soul that she will let him find her." If Flossy could have heard this unspoken sentence she would have marveled. Let him find her! Why, she was dimly conscious that she was seeking for him, but no such thought had presented itself as that God was really seeking after her. She went on, still falling behind, and trying to hide the rush of feeling that the simple question had called forth. She was very quiet at the dinner table. She was oblivious to steel forks or the want of spoons. These things that had hitherto filled her life and looked of importance to her had strangely dwindled. She was miserably disappointed. She had looked forward to Chautauqua as a place where she could have such a nice time. That word nice was a favorite with her, and surely no one could be having a more wretched time than this. And it was not the rain either, over which she had been miserable all day yesterday, nor her cashmere dress. She didn't care in the least now whether it cleared or not, and as to her dress, she had torn her silk twice, and it was badly drabbled, but she did not even care for that. She wanted—what? Alas for the daughter of nominally Christian parents, living among all the privileges of a cultured Christian society, she did not know what she wanted. Dr. Calkins had one eager listener. If he could have picked out her earnest, wistful eyes among the crowd of upturned faces, he would have let old Socrates go, and given himself heart and soul to the leading of this groping soul into the light. As it was, he hovered around it, touching the subject here and there, thrilling her with the possibilities stretching out before her; but he was thinking of and talking all the while to those who had reached after and secured this something that to her was still a shadow. Now and then the speaker brought the quick tears to her eyes as he referred to those who had followed the teaching of his lips with sympathetic faces and answered the appeal to their hearts with tears. But her tears were different from those. They were the tears of a sick soul, longing for light and help. The entire party ignored the evening meeting. Marion declared that her brain whirled now, so great had been the mental strain. Ruth was loftily indifferent to any plan that could be gotten up, and Eurie's wits were ripe for mischief. Flossy's opinion, of course, was not asked, nobody deeming it possible that she could have the slightest desire to go to meeting. In fact, Eurie put their desertion on the ground that Flossy had been exhausted by the mental effort of the day, and needed to be cheered and petted. She on her part was silent and wearily indifferent. She did not know what to do with her heavy heart, and felt that she might as soon walk down by the lake shore as do anything else. So down to the shore they went, and gave themselves up to the full enjoyment of the novel scene, an evening in the woods, great, glowing lights on every side, great companies of people passing to and fro, boats touching at the wharves and sending group after group to the central attraction, the grandstand, singing, music by thousands of voices ringing down to them as they loitered under the trees on the rustic seats. "I declare, it must be nice in heaven for a little while." It was Eurie who made this somewhat startling discovery and announcement after a lull had fallen upon their mirth. "Have you been there to see?" illogically asked Marion, as she threw a tiny stone into the water and watched the waves quiver and ripple. Eurie laughed. "Not quite, but this must be a little piece of it, this music, I mean. I am almost tempted to make an effort after the real thing. How exquisitely those voices sound! I'm very certain I should enjoy the music, whether I should be able to get along with the rest of the program or not. What on earth do you suppose they do there all the time anyway?" "Where?" "Why, in heaven, of course. That is what I was talking about. I believe you are half asleep, Flossy Shipley. You mustn't go to sleep out here. It isn't quite heaven yet, and you will take cold. Honestly, girls, isn't it a sort of wonderment to you how the people up there can employ their time? In spite of me I cannot help feeling that it must be rather stupid. Think of never being able to lie down and take a nap!" "Or read a novel," added Marion. "Isn't that your favorite employment when you are awake, Eurie? I'm sure I don't know much about the occupations of the place. I'm not posted. There is nothing about it laid down in our geography; and, in fact, the people who seem to be expecting to spend their lives there are unaccountably mum about it. I don't at this moment remember hearing any one ever express a downright opinion, and I have always thought it rather queer. I asked Nellie Whedon about it one day when she was going on about her expected tour in Europe. She had bored me to death, making me produce all my geographic and historic lore for her benefit; and suddenly I thought of an expedient for giving myself a little peace and a chance to talk about something else. 'Come, Nellie,' I said, 'one good turn deserves another. I have told you everything I can think of that can possibly be of interest to you about Europe. Now give me some information about the other place where you are going. You must have laid up a large stock of information in all these years.'" "What on earth did she say?" Ruth asked, curiously, while Eurie was in great glee over the story. "She was as puzzled as if I had spoken to her in Greek. 'What in the world can you be talking about?' she said. 'I'm not going anywhere else that I know of. My head has been full of Europe for the past year, and I haven't talked nor thought about any other journey.' Well, I enlightened her as to her expectations, and what do you think she said? You wouldn't be able to guess, so I'll tell you. She said I was irreverent, and that no one who respected religion would ask such questions as that, and she actually went off in a huff over my wickedness. So, naturally, I have been chary of trying to get some information on such reverent subjects ever since." Whereupon all these silly young ladies laughed long and heartily over this silly talk. Flossy laughed with the rest, partly from the force of habit and partly because this recital struck her as very foolish. Every one of them saw its inconsistent side as plainly as though they had been Christians for years; more plainly, perhaps, for it is very strange what blinded eyes we can get under certain systems of living the religious faith. Presently the society of these young ladies palled upon themselves, and they agreed one with another that they had been very silly not to go to meeting, and that another evening they would at least discover what was being said before they lost the opportunity for getting seats. "Stupid set," said Eurie. "Who imagined that the crowd would do such a silly thing as to rush to that meeting, as if there were nothing else to do but go flying off for a seat the moment the bell rings? I thought there would be crowds out here, and we would make some pleasant acquaintances, and perhaps get a chance to take a boat ride." And so, in some disgust, they voted to bring the first day at Chautauqua to a sudden close, and try tent life. Silence and darkness reigned in the tent where our girls had disposed of themselves. It was 2 hours since they had come in. It took more than an hour, and much talking and more laughter, not to mention considerable grumbling on Ruth's part, before everything was arranged to their satisfaction, or, as Ruth expressed it, to their endurance, for the night. 3 of the girls were sleeping quietly, their fun and their discontents alike forgotten, but Flossy tossed wearily on her bed, turned her pillow and turned it back again, and sought in vain for a quiet spot. With the silence and the darkness her unrest had come upon her again with tenfold force. She felt no nearer a solution of her trouble than she had in the morning. In fact, the pain had deepened all day, and the only definite feeling she had about it now was that she could not live so; that something must be done; that she must get back to her home and her old life, where she might hope to forget it all and be at peace again. Into the quiet of the night came a firm, manly step, and the movement of chairs right by her side, so at least it seemed to her. All unused to tent life as she was a good deal startled, she raised herself on one elbow and looked about her in a frightened way before she realized that the sounds came from the tent next to theirs. Before her thoughts were fairly composed they were startled anew, this time with the voice of prayer. Very distinct the words were on this still night air. Every sentence was as clear as though it had really been spoken in the same tent. Now, there was something peculiar in the voice. Clearly cut and rounded the words were, like that of a man very decided, very positive in his views, and very earnest in his life. There was also a modulation to the syllables that Flossy could not describe, but that she felt. And she knew that she had heard that voice twice before, once on the boat the evening before, and once as they jostled together in the crowd on their way to dinner. She felt sorry to be unwittingly a listener to a prayer that the Maker evidently thought was being heard only by his Saviour; but she could not shut out the low and yet wonderfully distinct sentences, and presently she ceased to wish to, for it became certain that he was praying for her. He made it very plain. He called her "that young girl who said to day that she could not think of thee as her Father, who seems to want to be led by the hand to thee." Did you ever hear yourself prayed for by an earnest, reverent, pleading voice? Then perhaps you know something of Flossy's feelings as she lay there in the darkness. She had never heard any one pray for her before. So destitute was she of real friends that she doubted much whether there were one person living who had ever before earnestly asked God to make her his child. That was what the prayer was asking. She lifted the white sleeve of her gown, and wiped away tear after tear as the pleading voice went on. Very still she was. It seemed to her that she must not lose a syllable of the prayer, for here at last was the help that she had been seeking, blindly, and without knowing that she sought, all this long, heavy day. Help? Yes, plain, clear, simple help. How small a thing it seemed to do! "Show her her need of thee, blessed Jesus," thus the prayer ran. And oh, hadn't he showed her that? It flashed over her troubled brain, then and there. "It is Jesus that I need. It is he who can help me. I believe he can. I believe he is the only one who can." This was her confession of faith. Then lead her to ask the help of thee that she needs; just to come to thee as the little child would go to her mother, and say, "Jesus, take me, make me thy child." Only that? Was it such a little, little thing to do? How wonderful! The praying ceased, and the young man who had remembered the stranger to whom God had given him a chance to speak during the day, all unconscious that other ear than God's had heard his words of prayer, laid himself down to quiet sleep. Flossy lay very still. The rain had ceased during the afternoon, and now some solemn stars were peeping in through the chinks in the tent, and the earth was moonlighted. She raised herself on one elbow, and looked around on her companions. How soundly asleep they were! Another few minutes of stillness and irresolution. Then a white robed figure slipped softly and quietly to the floor and on her knees, and a low whispered voice repeated again and again these words: "Jesus, take me, make me thy child." It wasn't very long afterward that she lay quietly down on her pillow, and earth went on exactly as if nothing at all had happened; knew nothing at all about it. Even the sleeper by her side was totally ignorant of the wonderful tableau that had been acted all about her that evening. But if Eurie Mitchell could have had one little peep into heaven, just then, what would her entranced soul have thought of the music and the enjoyment there? For what must it be like when there is "joy in the presence of the angels in heaven"? CHAPTER IX.